Good morning, Rich.
Uh, good off. Good morning, Pat. Good afternoon, Rich.
Yeah, morning to me,
Morning to you.
afternoon to you,
Yeah.
unless the world started spinning in the wrong direction there.
Who knows, man? These days, anything could happen.
You just, you never know, man. You wake up and you go, well, yeah, I noticed about a year ago they had things have gotten so crazy that in the United States Congress they had the congressmen, they all got together and they had this meeting and this hearing where they pretty much admitted that aliens existed, and everybody was just kind of like, "What are we having for lunch?" You know?
Yeah, yeah. But no one
Yeah.
believes anything anymore.
What's that?
Everything. No one believes anything anymore. Everything's fake news.
Is that what it
You
is?
know.
It was just
Yeah, man.
like we were just like, yeah, so what? I don't think they're interested. I think they came, landed, boom.
Yeah.
They're
You guys are nuts. Like, yeah. Like, there's nothing worth invading here or engaging with. Like, you guys
yeah,
are
I
mad.
think that just came
Yeah,
down
yeah.
there like, no, we're not getting in the middle of this.
Yeah,
We're
yeah.
heading up. So, how are things in the motherland today?
Yeah, doing okay, Pat. Yeah, it's kind of cloudy, grey, coolish day. So another glorious British summertime. Actually, it's been quite a nice summer, but yeah, it's a bit cooler today, which isn't the end of the world. I've been out doing a bit of work, and now I'm home and get to talk to you and talk about Jesus and addiction recovery. So everything's good in my world, mate. What about you?
Uh, well, to paraphrase of one of your famous great countrymen, Charles Dickens, it's the best of times and it's the worst of times because we are at the end of summer. You know how hot it gets here in the summertime.
I do.
And we love the summer. We love the beaches. We love the water. We love going out. You know, we love the lush, the greenery. We don't even mind the heat until we get to the end of August. Then we're thick of it. And it's like 97 degrees Fahrenheit and, fall's right around the corner. But that's the best of times because we've got the fall coming up, football season, or as we say here in the South, football.
Football.
So we're all looking forward to it. So we're right here on the precipice. So we got the best of times. Fall's the best of time of year for me. But the worst is right here at the end of August. And one of the things that makes it the worst, not just the heat, but now we have this last little couple weeks of hurricane season. And you guys don't get to experience that, do you?
No, we had a hurricane. Like literally, this isn't even a joke. We had a hurricane in 1987. People still talk about it now. Like straight up.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Well, the thing about hurricane season, this actually kind of tests our Christianity or our obeying Jesus, because here's what happens. The hurricane, you pay attention to them at this time of year. They form off the coast of Africa. And so you hear, oh, there's an invest, there's a system that's developing out there. So we start watching it. It's a couple weeks away. But what we're hoping is if you live in the Gulf, if you live inside the Gulf, if you like Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, all the way around to Texas, the first thing we're thinking is, please God, let it go hit the East Coast. So we want it to take a right turn, You're subconsciously not even really thinking, and it's going to hit we want it to move out. Like we have one right now, Aaron. It formed. My first reaction, oh, let that thing go north. Well, you're not thinking there's somebody out there. Let it go hit Bermuda. They turn up north. If it comes into the Gulf, then we're on watch and we start thinking, let it go straight, let it hit Mexico. It's not us. I mean, I know that's not right, but that's our thinking. Then if it starts turning north, we start, if you live where I live in Mississippi, because we've been through some very horrible hurricanes. I mean, it was like a bomb had dropped here, power off, and you kind of get bombed back to the Stone Age. But then we start hoping it hits our neighbors. It's not what we're really not wanting to hit us, but oh man, I hope that thing, oh, maybe it'll go to Houston. If it starts turning to the right, well, maybe it'll go hit Tampa. And then we get, oh, it looks like it's going towards Tampa. And then what's the first thing we do? We all start thinking, oh, well, y'all pray let's pray for the people in Tampa. So now we're ready to pray for the people that we've been hoping we're going to get hit by that hurricane instead of us. And I got to thinking, it's kind of like the Bible verse. When they ask, I think it was Matthew 34, when the Pharisees asked Jesus, I think maybe Matthew 36:40,
Let's have a look.
possibly.
Let's have a little look. Matthew 36. Matthew only goes up to 28, dude.
Well, then that's not it. It's 30, I know it's 36:30, 36:40. But the verse is the Pharisee asked Jesus, teacher, he's kind of trying to test him. He says, what are the most important commandments? So if you Google that,
Yeah, I'm looking. What bit of the Bible does the Pharisee ask Jesus, what is the most important commandments? Let's have a little look, Pat. Matthew 22, 32, 34 to 40. So you were close, Pat. Let's have a look.
not really that close.
Well, you had the verses. You just
Yeah,
didn't have
I
the
have,
chapter. So I
yeah,
think, give yourself a little bit of credit, Pat. Yeah.
a little bit,
Yeah.
a little bit. Yeah, I'm not the Bible scholar, but what he says is the first, the most important, tell me if I'm reading, if I'm getting this right, is to love the Lord thy God with all your heart.
Yep.
That's the greatest, right? But then he says the second one, and this one is something that I don't think people really pay a lot of attention to what he may have been meaning. Then he says, and see if I get this right, love thy neighbor as you love yourself, or
Yeah.
love thy neighbor as I have loved you. Am I
Yeah.
close?
Yeah. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
Right.
Mm.
So to me, and I just started thinking about that. To me, he has given us a commandment that is virtually impossible to live up to because I don't know anybody that does that. You may do that. Uh, I every day get up and I'm trying to follow Jesus. I'm trying to do what I'm supposed to do. But who does? I just wonder sometimes if he didn't give us a commandment that he knew we could never measure up to, just letting us know that your grace, your salvation is not about you fulfilling commandments. It's through my blood that I shed for you. But this is what you should aspire to.
Yes.
I, I was wondering what your thoughts on that because I don't do that. I'm not saying I shouldn't do that, but just like the hurricane, I noticed the other day, I'm like, I am literally first, I'm hoping this thing goes over here. I'm hoping it goes over here, but it goes into everything else in life, is
Well, it's like that's the point of grace, isn't it? For me, like as I understand it, it's like, look, Jesus was the only one that could like fulfill the law. I came to fulfill the law, right? So he was the only one that could like, he was the only one among us that was perfect, right? He was the only one among us that was like without sin. And so that's why he came, right? Because like no one could live up to the law. So he came, paid the price for our sins. But then what he does is he makes some very strong suggestions about how we should how we should try and live. I really like. So the book that really turned it around for me in my faith walk was the Ragamuffin Gospel by Brennan Manning. And Manning talks about this extensively, right? He's like, you're gonna get it wrong. Like that's the point. That's why he came. But Christianity and being a follower of Jesus Christ is not about an enforced morality. But what it's about is like if you allow the Spirit to work through you, then you will be more equipped to live like that, right? If the Spirit's within you, right? But because obviously we have the flesh and like our humanity will never get it right all the time, and that's why we need a savior. Without and I think he kind of talks about this in Romans, right? Paul talks about this in Romans, but it's like it's that fallibility that meant we need a savior. Because if we didn't have that, we wouldn't have needed a savior. So the whole thing like completes itself in that regard, right? It's like, yeah, like it's because of our imperfection that we needed Jesus in the first place, and that's why he came. But then he tells us how we should try and live, and then we do our best to kind of live up to that. And that, but knowing that we'll always fail, like knowing that we'll always fail at some point, because that's the whole point, and that's why he came.
that's kind of what I was thinking. That's an excellent way of explaining because that's what I was thinking. He's done two things there. He's given you something to aspire to. And the Holy Spirit does remind me. I mean, I say it jokingly about, hey, we want this to go hit Houston, or we hope it goes in this direction. But it did. It's what it dawned on me the other day. It's like you're literally sitting there thinking, you're going to be happy if it's going to hit the city or this town. And so when there are things, when I'm not living up to that, when I'm not loving that, and the neighbor means everybody, when I'm not doing that, a voice goes off in my head. So I think you're exactly right. He's describing that here's something to aspire to. You should shoot for that, but you're not going to hit it. But that's why I came. So what you
Yeah.
said was brilliant there. So speaking of your brilliance, our episode a couple of weeks ago on overcoming, when you were talking about the first step, I got some comments about that helped some people that are going through recovery, beginning recovery. And oh, and by the way, if anybody, to our listeners, whatever platform you're on, there is a send a text button on most of the platforms. If you have a comment like these folks have, you have a question. I mean, if you have anything, if you know Jesus, if you don't know Jesus, if it's something about addiction, loneliness, anything that we might could give you some advice or discuss, send a comment, and if we're able to, we will discuss it on here. If you don't have that on the platform or you're on YouTube, you can go to patmccool.com, send me an email, because we just have a passion to help people out. And we have an awful lot of experience in being able to do it because we both did it wrong the first way. And that's how I've learned. That's how I've learned. So feel free to send in a comment, send in an email like these folks did. And we won't mention your name if you don't want to, but we'd be certainly willing to discuss and do whatever we can in a discussion. But this post that you made that I thought was really important, can I read it's a LinkedIn post
Yeah, go for it, Pat.
for Richard. And this applies not just to addiction, but I think it's very important that people that are going through recovery. But we'll do this and then you can elaborate on it. It says, we wouldn't try to build a house without raw materials. So why do we expect the brain to function without them? In therapy, especially with clients in early recovery or those struggling with mood, compulsive behaviors, or burnout, I'm increasingly drawn to the question, what's the system being asked to run on? We often talk about trauma, attachment, psychological patterns, all vital, but the biochemical foundations matter too. Brains that are undernourished, inflamed, or depleted simply don't have the capacity for the kind of regulation and reflection that recovery demands. A few basics I always come back to. Protein is non-negotiable. It provides the building blocks, amino acids for dopamine, serotonin, GABA, and more. Without enough high-quality protein, many clients are stuck chasing motivation or mood that isn't coming back because the raw ingredients just aren't there. Omega-3s, especially EPA, DHA from fish oil, help with inflammation, mood, and brain repair. Some studies even suggest they support impulse control and reduce aggression. I've seen real changes in clients when this is added consistently. Amino acids like L-tyrosine, I might be pronouncing that wrong,
No, that's right.
HTP, DLPA, and theanine can be game changers, and you've put in asterisks when used carefully. They help replenish the neurotransmitters flattened by years of substances, stress, or restriction, but they're not one size fits all, and they work best when used alongside professional support. Nutrition alone won't heal trauma or rebuild trust in relationships, but I've seen time and again how stabilizing the body can give clients just enough bandwidth to start engaging with therapy from a place of strength, not survival. We need to keep expanding the way we think about recovery. Food, mood, and behavior are linked, and we ignore that at our peril.
Yes.
That's brilliant and something I didn't really think about.
Well, that's the whole point of it, Pat, really, is that like not many people do, right? So we know that, addiction therapy is helpful, right? Like 12-step programs, helpful. Yeah, like there's lots of good stuff that can and does happen in those, like that kind of psychological, social approach, right? There's obviously a strong, like spiritual element, And what that means to different people is different things, but to us, that's Jesus, right? And that is, of course, like a vital, the biggest component for many, yeah, that get to be touched in that way. Um, but there's this whole like biological component that just gets missed, right? And it's the building blocks of neurotransmitters. It's what we put in our body. So you can explain addiction from like a purely like neurological standpoint. We're talking about depleted neurotransmitters. We're talking about like a behavior that's driven and governed by the midbrain, the limbic system, that overwhelms logic. Emotions trump logic every time. And that's why people end up doing things, being driven towards doing things, which then, even to them, later on make no sense. So you'll hear the relapse, the guy that's just, used a shed load of cocaine, or, been on a big like alcohol binge and like, woken up and like, what have I done? Why did I do that? Look at the harm, the pain I've caused myself and others once again. And it doesn't make any sense. But then if you look at that from a neurological standpoint, it's like a brain that's like crying out for, whatever it might be, for something that it's learned makes it feel a bit better, right? Like it's very difficult for that brain to heal if you're not giving it the things that help it heal, So you need to be fueling the brain, giving the brain what it needs to repair and to run like properly, like to allow what's called like executive functioning. So that's like the decision making, to be able to make good decisions. Like I want to have a drink. Maybe what I should do is call someone. Maybe what I should do is pray. Maybe what I should do is go to a meeting. Maybe what I should do is contact my therapist. But like that all goes offline in a brain that's just not able to function properly because it doesn't have the building blocks of that.
Yeah, that makes, I go all the way back to the days when I was doing the drugs, the drinking all the time. I felt horrible all the time. So you got up and it was one thing led to the other. I felt horrible. So instead of doing the things that would make me feel better internally, it's time to go do the drugs, time to go do the drink, instead of making yourself feel better. I mean, doing things that will actually make you feel better, and the better you feel, the better decision making. Is that part of what you're saying there?
Yeah, absolutely. It's difficult to make healthy decisions if your brain is not working properly. So what you end up doing is you chase the thing that will, for a short time, make you feel better, like cocaine. So you injected cocaine, right? I remember that from your book. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that is like this huge dopamine dump, right? Like like many, 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 many times greater than like a normal like dopamine. It governs behavior. It's the reward neurotransmitter. It drives us towards things that make us feel good. But for most people, that might be like a steak. Yeah, like, or like a night, walking by a river, whatever, like something, like a normal human thing. But then you hit it with like something that releases that much dopamine, and then you have a crash, right? So if you're not giving the brain enough fuel to make a healthy level of dopamine, then you will automatically be drawn back to the thing that offers some hope of like you rekindling that level of dopamine again, right? So that's like injecting more cocaine, you know, and that's why eventually you will get to the point where the cocaine doesn't do what it did. That's why people are always chasing that first high, Pat. Yeah, because that first huge dump of dopamine is the first time you experience that. Like, I mean, it's amazing, right? Like I was a crack smoker, right? The first time I smoked crack, I was just like, it was like just this almost like transcendental experience, right? But so you'll always be chasing that. And until you give the brain the stuff that it makes just to like start generating enough dopamine in a healthy fashion, you'll keep chasing that. And then the other side to that is that like if you don't give the brain what it needs through the food, in fact, you give it what it doesn't need. So what we see in early recovery, and this becomes normalized somewhat, is people are chasing the things that are like lesser versions of the cocaine, sugar, right? Like nicotine, caffeine. So they fill themselves up with that. You know, we see that a lot. You know, like you go to an AA meeting, there'll be a lot of people smoking outside. Yeah. You go to like, I don't know, some other kind of convention, like I don't know, a car salesperson convention. You won't see that many people smoking outside. So like recovering addicts, they're chasing all these things to try and like get some version of that like dopamine hit, but it's like a dirty dopamine hit and it keeps those addictive circuits alive, you know? And then and that's like, you know, relapse is linked to that. You know, relapse is linked to that. So you start giving your brain enough fuel to make enough dopamine. And what you'll see is people, rather than like forcing themselves to stop drinking caffeine, eating sugar, or to smoke a bit less, smoking's a little bit more complicated, but like they will be naturally less drawn towards that because their brain is not somewhere behind the scenes saying, we need that, we need that, we need that, we need that, we need that. We need to get something that's going to get some dopamine going here, man. We need to, you know, because it's got enough, it's got what it needs to like be doing that on its own. You know, giving it what it needs.
You hit the nail on the head when the injecting of the cocaine. You know, I mentioned I wasn't physically, I was emotionally, but maybe I was physically. But when I injected that cocaine, like you said, that was, I mean, that was an experience. Right then, I was thinking, how can I go the rest of my life feeling like this? Because this is it. And I never felt that way again. You could have turned right around the next day and gotten a better quality where you chase it. You're always chasing that having that very first. I don't know if heroin was like that, but I never got that again. I just kept chasing it and kept chasing it. And you're talking about, I kept making one bad decision. They kept getting worse and worse. And as far as nutrition, I wasn't really eating at all. I didn't even really care. You would just eat, you know, just something just to maybe at 1 o'clock in the morning or 2 o'clock. You didn't really think about it. All you were really thinking was trying to get that next hit or get back to that feeling again. So your mind, I guess, is programmed. So I think that's great information that you're saying the food staying nutritious because once once I started, once I became a believer, started getting my act together, you know, which we're not going to rehash that, you know, we've talked about it or it's in the book. Um, I started exercising because had gotten out of shape. And so I started exercising and all of a sudden I started feeling better. I started going out and jogging. I started running. I started, um, you know, lifting weights a little bit. And then I just started feeling better and better. And then it was a high to go out and exercise and sweat and then come in. And then less and less, you're wanting those bad things. You're talking about the steak, for example. Right now, the thought of eating a steak is very thrilling to me. I mean, you know, it really is. I get excited about it. You know, I'm just like, oh, back then you didn't care. So all those the things that would otherwise give you great pleasure in life are completely gone.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly that, right? So it's like I liken it to this. I explain it to the people I work with like this, right? It's like if you live on a roller coaster with all of its highs and lows, imagine you lived on a roller coaster for 4 years. Yeah. Like when you get off that roller coaster, right, like walking around the amusement park at a leisurely pace is going to be pretty dull. Yeah. Like it's not going to be a lot of fun. Right. It takes time to get used to not being on that roller coaster. And it takes a lot of time to start to be able to wrest a little bit of pleasure from normal, pleasurable things, right? So it's like, and you have to allow that. So like often there's like a very grey period after people clean up. You know, it's like nothing. What do you want to do? Nothing. Do you know what I mean? Like nothing. Like nothing really offers you much pleasure. And it takes time for that to reset. It could take 60 days, it could take 6 months. It depends how much you've been hitting it. But to help the brain to start functioning properly, to help it rebuild, start it help to be able to generate enough neurotransmitters to promote a bit of functioning and to start to enjoy life again. You know, you know, giving it the right fuel is essential. So it's like protein, 80 to 120 grams a day. Split that into 4 doses. Yeah. So like breakfast, you know, lunch, afternoon snack and dinner. Yeah.
A lot of protein.
Yeah. Well, it is and it isn't, right? Like it is and it isn't. Yeah, it's actually not that, if a chicken breast has, say a good sized chicken breast might be like 80. Excuse me, it might be 20. Yeah.
Right.
Just like
Oh,
four
that is a
chicken.
lot.
Yeah, 4 chicken breasts a day, like 4 protein bars a day. Yeah, although you're better off eating like natural foods, right? But so like protein, healthy fats, like fatty fish, yeah, lots of greens, complex carbs, so you don't get that, spike and crash in the blood sugar. Yeah, blood sugar is important as well. And that thing you can use like good quality omega-3 fish oil. Yeah, that's helpful. Yeah, that really helps the brain start kind of firing again. And I've worked with guys
Like
that
free fish oil.
yeah, so you're looking for something with the kind of a good amount of EHA and DPA in it. Um, yeah, and taking that on the daily. Um,
So the supplements, not just the food, because I remember I used to take an omega. It was like a gold omega 3. I guess it was. You
yeah,
just
yeah.
took one. You think that's good too? What about like a protein supplement? If you're not eating, not a protein supplement, but like a powdered shake or something like that.
Yeah, look, they're a really good thing to fall back on. I often talk to people about using those things as like a breakfast food, right? So like traditionally, like it's quite hard to find things that are full of protein for breakfast unless you're talking like sausages and bacon and like
Eggs. They
eggs.
say eggs.
Eggs are really good, but like, most people busy lives who are on the go, like sometimes people they're not going to scramble some eggs every morning, right? They're not going to fry some eggs every morning. So what you would need to help people avoid is like people would have, I mean, in your country, like people eat donuts for breakfast, right? That's like probably the worst thing you can eat for breakfast, like
I
for your
know.
mental health. But over here, like we would eat like croissants, so you'd have a bowl of cereal. I mean, there's a bit of protein in the milk, but not much, right? So like protein shakes in the morning can be helpful. Handful of nuts for your like healthy fats, a little bit of protein, a decent amount of protein in nuts. But yeah, just whatever, however you get it into you, get it into you. If you're gonna have scrambled eggs on toast, like have a good quality kind of like a dark rye bread with like pumpernickel, like that, something like substantial like that. Yeah, and like just so with that, you're giving yourself you got some good quality fats in the egg yolk. Yeah, you got lots of protein, egg white. You've got some complex carbohydrates, in this kind of good quality heavy bread, right? That's a good setup for the day. Eating a bowl of Captain Crunch and a donut is not, that's like the opposite of what you need for breakfast. But like, so it's helping people find ways and helping people to find ways for work for them as well. Um, yeah,
Makes a lot of sense because I've noticed if I don't eat like a high, a lot of protein early in the day, I just get tired and I get really. If I eat a
yeah,
lot of carbs, I mean, I like potatoes and things like that. But if I eat a lot of carbs, I'm crashing. I'm getting tired, even if I'm just sitting around doing something. And I'm one of those that I'm not hungry in the morning. I'm not that hungry. I'm not going to sit down and eat one of those, put me into a coma breakfast, sausage, eggs. That just the thought of that makes me just want to go lay down and go to sleep. So I start every day with make my own fruit smoothie. I just put fruit in blender, fruit with some low fat yogurt. Um, but I guess you could throw a scoop of protein in there, just like it
100%,
just
man. Yeah, throw that in there. Yeah.
next thing you know,
'Cause
go ahead.
fruit's good, but fruit's got a lot of sugar in it. And even though it's naturally occurring sugar, that's still like blood sugar spike and crash. Yeah.
Oh,
So,
does it really?
yeah. So, like, I would say, like throwing some protein powder in there is helpful. Definitely throwing some protein powder in there would be
So
a good idea.
even with the fruit, it has the sugar that's going to spike you, and then you have somewhat of a crash there.
Yeah. And that's how I understand it. Now, look, I'm not an expert in this stuff, but I've done a bit of training, and I've seen some great results applying it in my practice. But when you blend it all, yeah, like rather than the body, needing to break it down, yeah, which slows the release into the bloodstream of those sugars, when you blend it all, it just hits you. It's like boom, because it's already broken down. So that that's another thing to consider. Like if you are going to eat fruit in the morning, fruit's obviously a good thing, but maybe like eat it rather than drink it. That could be helpful as well. Yeah. But
Blender, freeze it. I put a bunch of bananas, strawberries, yogurt, some milk, apple juice, blend it up, and just drink it. Other than that, I'm not that hungry in the morning. I'm not going to sit down and I'm not going to, I'm not going to just pile in a big breakfast. But what you're saying is making yourself feel good makes it a lot easier to resist temptations to the things that are going to make you relapse, or it's going to make you make a lot better decisions.
yeah, and it's like, look, there's this idea that early recovery, early sobriety is supposed to be really hard. Yeah, you're supposed to have a low mood, like it's supposed to
Right.
be what we would call a graft, like a slog, like a difficult endeavor, right? That you're going to suffer, right? And there is some truth in that, regardless of what you do. Cleaning up, getting sober, it's not the easiest thing in the world because often like you kind of come, it's almost like you come to right after like having been in a coma or like a trance or being possessed, for like however many months or years, right? But if you give your body what it needs to start to help the brain to regenerate and repair itself, right, it makes it a lot easier. It makes it a lot easier for sure.
I said when I started, getting my act together, as I started, becoming a believer, but I'd started making these good choices and I started enjoying things that I didn't enjoy before. I enjoyed going out, getting a sweating walk. I enjoyed exercise and I enjoyed kind of eating well. And so I was in a much better, the point is I just started becoming happier, not just because I was getting the Holy Spirit and joy in my life. That was the most important thing, but physically, I was starting to enjoy things that I'd never enjoyed before. I was like, look, I feel a lot better doing this. I don't feel sick and tired all the time. So then life itself starts becoming a much more enjoyable experience.
Well,
So
yeah, having seen your story, obviously I've read your story, Pat, right? And uh, you, your life was a roller coaster, right? There was a
right.
lot of reckless behavior, a lot of adventures, a lot of highs and lows. Yeah, a lot of like car crash, flying through the air in a car, landing upside down, all that kind of stuff, right? Lots and lots of spikes, and then you introduce the drugs to that, it's an even bigger spike, right? So yeah, like getting reaccustomed to doing healthy things, getting off the roller coaster. It's a process, but it's if you stick with it, it gets better, and it gets a lot better. Yeah. I guess the other thing to talk about as well, as I mentioned at the end of that post that you kindly read out, is the supplementation. So tyrosine, just a little bit on that. Tyrosine is a dopamine precursor. So that is the protein, the amino acid and protein, is protein. Like tyrosine is the exact type of protein that your brain needs to generate dopamine. So like I've worked with guys who they're constantly preoccupied with thoughts of their addiction. They may have been sober for some time, constantly preoccupied, right? They drink a lot of caffeine, they vape a lot, they eat a lot of sugary food. Yeah. Now all of that is the brain saying, screaming out for more dopamine. Yeah. Like screaming out for it, right? Because the levels are so low. So you take these kind of dirty dopamine hits, right? To like just to try it, it's the brain's best effort based on what it knows at that point to try and get some more dopamine. If you give it the fuel it needs to make enough dopamine, people will naturally find themselves less drawn towards those things in a way that's quite intuitive. It's not like a what would you call it, like an immense effort of will. I must stop. I need to not. It's like actually like I don't fancy getting a donut in the afternoon. I don't feel like that. You know, actually, I don't think I'm gonna, like reaching for the vape. Actually, I don't want to vape. It's like that sort of thing. So tyrostine's good for that. Just run through these quickly, Pat, for the listeners. 5-HTP serotonin. So a lot of kind of like anxiety and obsessive thoughts and sort of like low mood. will often be linked to a shortfall in serotonin. So you give your right, you introduce some 5-HTP that helps your brain to make some more serotonin. DLPA, that's about endorphins. If you're low in endorphins, endorphins are kind of like the warm and fuzzies, like so
Mess
that
those
helps.
up. You mess those up when you're doing a lot of drugs and
Yeah,
behavior.
man, that stuff's all over the place. All over the place. Um, I mean, like, just I guess a bit of information that's useful is like it isn't cocaine that makes you feel good. It's what cocaine gets the brain to do. What cocaine does is it makes the brain release huge amounts of dopamine. You know, so like cocaine in and of itself doesn't actually make you feel good, but it's what it does to the brain. Like everything we do is governed by neurotransmitters. Everything, our decisions around food, our decisions around sex, our decision around drugs, our decisions around alcohol, our decisions about are we going to go left? Are we going to walk out the door? Am I going to go left or right? Yeah, it's all governed by neurotransmitters. You know, so helping your brain get to some sort of like stability is a really good thing. So if you're gone,
Go ahead.
Pat, sorry,
No, you go
hello.
ahead. Go ahead.
But like, if you're a guy or a girl and you're in early recovery and you're drinking like 7 cups of coffee in the morning, and then vaping all day, and then you want to hit like a load of sugar you get in the evenings after your meeting, and the only thing you can think about is hitting a load of kind of sugary food, candy, donuts, whatever. Yeah, then you might want to have a look at this. Yeah, you might want to have a look at this. Yeah.
Before you finished, you were theanine. You have theanine listed. You listed the first off. Where do you get the tyrosine?
Oh, go to CVS, go to Walgreens. In this country, you the best place I would say to get it in this country would be to go on Amazon. Yeah, but be careful because there's a lot you have to check the reviews on Amazon. There's a website called iHerb. That's good. Um, y-
The
yeah.
food. It's not just something you get in food. It's better taking it in a supplement, or is there a way to get it in food? The tyrosine.
If you've got a really good diet, you can give your body everything it needs to do this. However, if you've got a serious depletion, yeah, if your brain is really like starving and crying out for these things, using some supplements is a good idea. Yeah. Like the supplements they're a bit of a shortcut. They are a bit of a shortcut. Yeah. And it can kind of go hand in hand, right? Because it's like, I've given my brain enough dopamine. Now I feel enough motivation to go to the store. Yeah, to go to the shops, we'd say here, right? And buy some decent food. So it's almost like, the supplements can definitely be a bit of a jump start. They
ta-
can definitely be a
Taking
bit.
taking the supplements, learning what food that is in there. The DLPA. It seemed like that was important. I have no clue what is that? And where do you
Uh,
get the DLPA? Could you buy that in
so
a supplement? Is that in food?
Same. Go on Amazon. Go into CVS or Walgreens. Yeah, like you'll find it.
So, it just seems like most of this stuff is in the food. If you go back to the Bible and just see the stuff that God provided us to eat, not all the stuff that we've manufactured. So much of the stuff we have now is just preservatives. It's pre-manufactured, especially in America. You talked about Captain Crunch. I don't know if you've ever seen the thing where the box of cereal in the UK has like 4 or 5 ingredients, and then the one in America just is like War and Peace,
Yeah,
you know, of all of these preservatives. But so if people just did research on what's the good food that had all of these things in there. You mentioned theanine, my wife, because this is not just for recovery. This is just basic day-to-day living and feeling good. Even just being a follower of Christ, you want to make good decisions. You want to be the person that he wants you to be. You want to feel better. And not having these things can make a person cranky, can make a person not make good decisions. The theanine, I guess there's an L-theanine, but my
that's it.
wife was having trouble sleeping, and she doesn't eat the square meals like she should. Because she's always running around. She does a lot more than I do. She's just stays busy, and she wasn't sleeping, and she had a thing, and she started taking this L-theanine. Is that the same thing you're mentioning
That's
here?
it. 100%. Yep, that's it.
Yeah, bought it, the capsule. And she said, I used to take this in the past, so we ordered some. And she started taking it, started feeling good again, started sleeping better. And it really helped her out having that in her system. So I noticed that when I looked in there. And I just think that it, the average person going through life, like I said, when I started becoming a follower of Jesus, started exercise, started making good decisions, the better shape I got into, the better I felt, the more I started loving things. Like I didn't care about a steak back then, but now when you see a steak, I'm sitting there thinking, well, that's something very pleasurable.
Yeah,
All
man.
the things, once I started getting in shape, and when I say shape, I'm no underwear model, but uh, I just feel good most of the time. So it really enjoy things that I used to not enjoy. And you've spelled it out pretty good there. That's a lot of your diet, not just in recovery, but just in day-to-day life, eating well. It's like you said, that line of, a Starbucks in the South is a license to steal. Not just in the South, but in America. The line wraps around, and coming through there, and you're getting your double, triple latte, extra shot of whatever to kind of get you through the day, and probably maybe eating something sweet. But putting all of these things that you've mentioned into your body not just helps in recovery. I think it just helps in day-to-day life.
100%. 100%. It'll, it's just helpful for like mood and good functioning and, energy, all of those things. I think with the food, if you look at if you look at the list of ingredients on the back of your food, I think a good rule of thumb is if there's anything on there that's got more than two or three syllables, probably avoid. If there's anything on there you can't pronounce, yeah, like probably avoid that. And if there's anything in there that's got more than four or five ingredients, probably avoid that too. Some people just eat like whole foods, and that's fantastic. It's not always that practical these days. But if you look at something like Captain Crunch, you'll see obviously there'll be a huge amounts of preservatives, colorings, numbers. You guys have much less regulation around what goes into your food, right? But we have the same problem over here, right? You look on the back of like a food stuff like Captain Crunch, right? It will probably say fructose, it'll probably say corn syrup, it'll probably say glucose, and it'll probably say sugar. It's just all sugar. You know what I mean? It's just all sugar. Yeah. So like being able to actually like decipher what's in your food is a really important thing. And I guarantee you, some of those long words, like the mad kind of chemical, like seven syllable, exaggerating a little bit, but like substances you will see listed in like processed or manufactured food, yeah, then if you Google some of those and look at like what that means and look at the effects it has on the body, I guarantee you'll be in for a shock. I'll guarantee you'll be in for a shock.
I never uh, thought it would have that kind of impact on recovery, but that just jumped out at me when I saw that should be so crucial that people should. I don't know if it's taught that much,
No,
but and
it's not. It's really not.
everyday life, I can just tell if I've been eating well, I feel well, I'm in a better mood. I get in the headache, the cranky or whatever, I can go back and go, look at what I ate. I just went in and I ate this, or I ate the potato and I'm tired. So that's great stuff. I will tell you, I learned kind of a way because I know people have trouble in life, with their what they're eating and how they're eating. And like you mentioned the steak. I won't eat a steak 5 days during the week, but at one point I had ballooned up to 240 pounds. Now back in my drug days and drinking, I had kind of gotten overweight and it would go back and forth. You start injecting heroin, that weight's coming off because you're not going to eat, but you're not looking better, you're not feeling better. But when I got married, as we talked in the last episode, when my wife caught the big fish, um,
He
I
landed that big one, man.
landed, boom, when she stepped in it, I started just eating and, just having a good time. I wasn't exercising or anything. I had, but I ballooned up to 240 pounds. I weigh right at about 180 pounds right now. I'm 5'9", so you can imagine 240 pounds. As a matter of fact, I still have the pants because they're like a tent. You could run them up a flagpole in an airport to tell the helicopters which way the winds were blowing. And I'd had suits that I got to know the tailor very well because I kept taking the suit. I had some fairly expensive suits, so I had to keep going. I'd keep
Yeah.
expanding these suits. But then one day I went out, and we're going to wrap up after I finish this. But this is just a way I learned to live life. I decided, all right, I've had enough of this. I can't even hardly move. I feel horrible again all the time. Uh, and I went out to this track that I jog on, and I started to walk around it. And I would run about 3 miles. I could get out and tap out about 3 miles. Now I don't run 3 miles. I jog. I mean, the 50-year-old lady, the little kid can come passing me, but I would go out there, work up a sweat and exercise. But I walked about 100, 200 yards. My back was killing me and I could barely move. And I just decided I'm going to finish this one lap. And then I came back the next day and I did two. And then I came back the next day and I did three. And I'm kind of talking to people out there that may find themselves out of shape and, they're not getting into. I just know how much difference it made in my life, getting in shape, getting energy, eating well, and exercising. Before I know it, I was back up to the 3 miles, but then I would kind of fluctuate a little bit because you would get on the kick where I would eat well and then not eat well. Well, I settled in. I read this book called Body for Life by a guy named Bill Phillips years ago. And I'm not suggesting that because it was into lifting and eating just, these specific things. And if you're really trying to muscle, I wasn't trying to do all that. But it really settled me into the theory behind this was you ate well, you exercised, you did that 6 days a week, and then you had a cheat day. People talk about that. You talked about, you said you had weight problems at one point, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for a long time, up and down, up and down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But well, what mine was, and it's not just the cheat day. That's just a little too rigid. I kind of live my life in kind of you had mentioned peaks before. I still like the peaks. It's just I get different. My peaks, different things bring me the peak. So I will go 4 or 5 days. As a comedian, I'm Friday and Saturdays. A lot of times I'm traveling or whatever, and I don't eat a lot while I'm out there. But to the average person that does that 5 day week and then does the weekend, the point is, if you take about 4 or 5 days out of the week, and that's the day you exercise, that's the day you eat well, because people want to live. I mean, I'm holding my hand up flat. People, a lot of times, they don't want to get in the valleys. But if you don't get in the valleys, you're not going to get up into the peaks. And what I mean by that is, go to the restaurants in where I live or where you live, and they're packed. People are in there eating big meals for lunch. They're constantly, I guess, maybe wanting the pleasure of eating, but you're going to be overweight. You're going to be tired. When you get to the weekend, it's not that big a deal. Way I do it is there's 4 or 5 days. I'm not going to spend a lot of money on food. I'm not going to eat a lot of calories. I'm just going to focus on eating well. But when I get to the weekend, now like a Friday or a Saturday, I'll eat whatever I want. I will destroy, we're getting pizza at my house. I'm getting mine. My wife's getting mine 'cause I'm eating the whole thing. If we're getting fried chicken, she's getting the chicken, I'm getting it and I'm eating it. The point is, I don't deny myself that. I'm going to have it. I'll sit there on Wednesday night going, oh yeah, we're going to cook some ribs this weekend. But I don't eat them. I'm not just constantly eating stuff to make you see what I'm saying? That would keep me out of
Yeah.
shape. So that's just something I just wanted to throw out there that's really worked for me because I know people that have struggled with getting in shape. And when you're feeling better, you and I talked about it in an uh, earlier conversation, how much better you're looking and feeling. And I didn't even notice you'd been losing some weight, but don't you feel much better? You feel a walk, in the park is far more enjoyable than it was when you're struggling and you're tired all the time. But that's kind of what worked for me. I just kind of, um, it's not denying myself. I live a certain way when I'm doing things, and then I have those couple days when I'm going to enjoy myself, and then I'll eat whatever I want to eat, and I'll enjoy it. And the funny thing is on that third day, you go Friday night eating whatever you want, or Saturday, you wake up on Sunday, you don't want to eat the garbage anymore. Not the garbage, but you want to go back to feeling the way I felt before I shoved that whole pizza in my mouth.
Balance, Pat. It's all about balance. Yeah. I think that's a good, we don't have to live rigidly, but, you can have some balance, and that's what I get from what you're saying. I think that's good advice for the people listening.
Well, Yeah. And the peaks, I still have the peaks that I have now are far, far higher than the peaks I had when I was doing it with the deception of the cocaine and the drugs and those type of things. But that's fantastic information that you gave, Richard. And we'll wrap it there, not just for people in recovery, but I think it's really important for people that are in recovery, especially in the first steps. Put good stuff in your body and making yourself feel good. And Google and research, you're saying you can find those things in food, you can find them in what you're eating, and protein is important. You see, I learned something that I did not know when I read that post. So, well, great information there, Rich. And we're going to leave it there. And good talking to you. And then I will catch up with you next week. And I think next week you had another post you had on here about inner child. I used to not like the word inner child, but it is something that I always thought that something that from your childhood, you carry an awful lot of things from your childhood. And I think you're delving into that. And that's something that I've always kind of looked into. So I think that will be a great discussion. So anyway, appreciate all your great information, Rich, and I will see you next week.
See you next week, Pat. Take care. Bye.
Okay.